Hi everyone, it's Coach Mike here with MK Martial Arts. Today we're going to be doing a series breaking down each of our fundamental solo drills. These drills are created to help you understand certain body movements of jiu-jitsu, coordination, understanding weight distribution, and overall upper body strength. We're going to break down each one of these techniques into their different parts. Some of these techniques have a direct relation to actual techniques that you'll see in a jiu-jitsu match. Some techniques or some of these solo drills will be used purely for developing upper body strength, flexibility, dexterity, coordination, all the attributes that you might need to become a good practitioner of jiu-jitsu. The first movement everybody usually learns when we're doing a martial art is a break fall. It's a way to absorb the impact of somebody throwing you, or if you get pushed backwards onto the ground. It gives you the ability to maintain composure, understand how to distribute energy away from your body so that the back of your head doesn't hit the ground. So we're going to start off with two variations. The first variation is a straight back break fall, and the second variation is going to be a side-to-side break fall, left and right. A lot of these drills are going to be blended together to create a full flow. And I'll explain that in process. But first, we're going to start with just the break fall. We're going to start with our feet shoulder width apart. You want to create a rounded concave body structure. So I want to think about bringing my shoulders forward, tucking my stomach in, and dropping my chin. Okay, I want to create my body to be sort of a ball so that no matter where I fall, I have a position where I have a rounded body where I can continue to dissipate the energy into the break fall instead of splatting like a box. Okay, so we're going to start with shoulders forward, chin down, hands crossed. I'm going to tuck my body into a little ball. Depending on how good you are at break falling, you can tuck lower or tuck higher to add more or less impact to the break fall. But for now, we're going to start with a very basic way of tucking ourselves low. So we cross our arms, tuck our chin. We're going to sit nice and low, get up onto your toes if you have to. And then as we fall, just before the back of our head hits the ground, we want to break with a full arm, nice and close to our body, palms down. Second variation is the side-to-side break fall. Similar mechanics, just a very different foot positioning. So we're going to start again with our feet in a shoulder width apart, parallel position. I'm going to take a step forward. Again, keeping that rounded body position, almost similar to a fighting stance. So I'm going to take a step forward. My back leg is going to draw a line diagonally across my lead leg. As I do, I'm going to drop down onto my knee to, again, create that dropping of momentum. And then I'm going to be break falling with the same arm as the back leg. So right leg steps forward in this case. Left leg is going to swing through. I'm going to sit and break fall. The next movement we're going to detail is the technical stand-up. This is normally taught with the break fall in order to get back up to our feet in a strong base position, ready to defend ourselves. And you can do these with a straight back break fall or a side-to-side break fall. We're just going to demonstrate it with the backward break fall. So again, crossing our arms, tucking our chin, sitting down low, we hit our break fall. Right away, I want to sit up to a strong position. Okay, so I decide which arm I'm going to post to. That same corresponding leg is going to stay sort of bent along the mat line. Okay, so I want to kind of be on my hip instead of being square onto my butt. It's very difficult to create a technical stand-up while you're on both butt cheeks. Okay, so as I stand up, I break fall. As I sit up, I kind of contort my body so that I'm on one hip. I like to think about it like just kind of hanging out watching TV. Okay, so I have a post hand, a dead leg as we call it, and then my opposite foot is going to be my secondary base. Okay, my secondary hand can be used for covering, making a distance, sort of a distance guide. The closer somebody, your attacker, gets to this hand, the more likely you're going to want to get to your back and start getting your feet up to create a guard. Okay, but for a drill, we'll have our hand kind of just standing up tall. Okay, tall chest, head up. I'm going to use my hand, that's base point, and my opposite foot to lift my hips off the ground. Okay, as I do, my base foot is going to sort of rotate down to the floor. If I keep this knee pointing up to the ceiling, it's going to be very difficult to get to a base, which is flat-footed and behind my post hand. So as I stand up, my left knee in this case sort of rotates down to the floor. It's very important that my dead leg in this case finds a position just slightly behind my post hand. Okay, I need to be able to take my hand off the ground as fast as possible. Okay, if I don't do that, if I do my technical stand-up like this, I cannot take my right hand off the ground without face planting. Okay, and notice how my foot is not flat to the ground. It is not a strong base point. So it's very important that when I lift my hips, I draw my foot backwards and behind my foot, or sorry, behind my hand. Now at this point, without moving my feet, I can take my hand off the ground, and now I'm in a strong fighting position ready to defend myself. Okay, so again, break fall, build up, opposite side, dead leg, base hand, hand up, protecting myself. Elevate the hips, draw my dead leg back, feel a nice strong position, take your hand off without needing to move your feet at all, and now I can stand up into a strong fighting stance. The shrimp or the hip escape. Undoubtedly the most important movement that you'll need to learn off of your back. This movement is designed to help you create space, create angles in order for you to escape positions or to change your body position for certain attacks or sweeps. Okay, we're going to connect it with our break fall and then our technical stand up to create a full loop, falling, moving, and standing back up. And this is how we practice it for our warm-ups every class. So we're going to start off with our straight back break fall, crossing our arms, tucking our chin, hitting that break fall. Right away, my feet are hitting the mat with a nice loaded position. The farther my feet are away from my hips, the harder it is for me to move. Okay, so I keep my feet nice and loaded, not uncomfortable, okay, but just nice and loaded up, right? I don't need to try to pull my feet back as far as I can because that becomes uncomfortable. So flat foot position, I can have my heels off the ground slightly. Again, I always want to maintain this concave position so my head and my shoulders are slightly rolled up and my stomach is engaged, okay? My head and shoulders can never be flat on the ground. I have too much friction on the mat. I need to try to limit as much space, so I want to try to turn myself into a ball. Okay, there's a lot of different ways of teaching it. I like to tell my students to drop one leg to the floor. That's going to tell me that all my work is going to be done with this leg. Okay, it's going to make it a little bit simpler to learn. Okay, from this position, I'm going to take a small external position with my foot. That's going to contort my hips to where it forces my hips to move in the correct direction. Okay, you'll see it done where the foot that's pushing, the hip is going to go in the opposite direction. You can do it. You will find some scenarios where you'll need to do it that way. But for jiu-jitsu, it's definitely best to have your hips moving in the same direction as your post leg. Okay. So again, we're here in this position. I drop my dead leg. I take an external rotation foot position. From here, I'm going to drive with a small bridge to the opposite shoulder. Okay. That's going to take my hips off the ground. It's going to put all the way onto my shoulder, making my hips light. Okay. From here, I'm going to use my base leg to push my hips in a sort of lateral direction, so that way I end up in this kind of shrimp-like position, okay? You know that you do it correctly because you should be able to kind of touch your legs in this kind of position. If you do a shrimp kind of like half shrimped. If you go like here like this, which will some people do when they start, I can't get anywhere near my feet. Okay, I'm not maximizing the amount of space that I can create with the hip escape or the shrimp. Okay, so again, we're gonna start here, drop one leg to the floor, take a step out, bridge up onto your opposite shoulder, and then move your hips away. You can extend your hands away from your initial position as long as they maintain tight elbows to the body. Don't push out here like this. It's gonna open up the space where people can start attacking and improving their position. So we always wanna have elbows tight to our body. I'll use that same foot to square myself back up, back to the normal position. I'm gonna drop the other leg, external step, bridge up on the opposite shoulder, and then move my hip. Okay, you should not be dragging your hip on the mat. It's more likely your foot is gonna slip off the ground. Okay, all the weight should be on your foot and opposite shoulder. Your hip should be off the ground and you should be hinging at the hip. And then you can place your hip back down at the very end. Use the same pushing force to pull yourself back to center and switch your legs. Hip escape, come back, switch legs. Hip escape, come back, switch legs. Okay. The faster you get at it, the better you will be. From here, we can build up to our technical stand-up and get back up to our hips. So I'll demonstrate a very simple flow. Break fall, 3 shrimps, technical stand-up. The next movement in our series is called the kangaroo hop. A lot of our solo drills have animal names to help you sort of see the movement and help keep a good reference in your head as to how it moves. Okay. For this one, it's very simple. For every technique, you can create variations to make them more difficult. But for now, we're just going to start with the basic movement. We're going to walk our hands out to a push-up position. All the weight needs to be transferred to my base hands so that my feet can be light. I'm going to bring my hands to my feet. My feet should be just outside of my hands. And in order to give a good squat position, flat feet with a tall chest. Very, very simple. Walk the hands out to a push-up position. Bring the feet to your hands. Sit as low as you can in the squat while maintaining flat feet. You can use your elbows to help open up your hips to increase flexibility and mobility. Spend some time in the squat position. Allow your hips to sink, relax, get loose, okay? Again. Walk out to a push-up position. Transfer your weight all the way to your hands. You can do this by simply leaning your shoulders over your wrists. It'll be a nice little wrist stretch. You bring your feet to your hands, find a nice flat foot position, and then sit into a squat. If you notice that your heels come off the ground, when you're squatting, your base is too narrow. If you find yourself not being able to sit as low as you might feel like you should be able to, your base is too wide. Shoulder width apart is generally the best foot position, and everybody has a slightly different body type. Some people with more flexible hips can have their base wider. Some people with more flexible hips can have their base narrower, excuse me. So you play around, but if you think about your hands are shoulder width apart, your hip width is going to be, your hip width is going to be just inside that. So again, shoulder width apart, feet just outside it, and there's perfect squat. Okay, knees are tracking somewhat outward. Do not let your knees bend inward. It's going to create instability in your ankles. And that is the kangaroo hop. Our next movement is called the alligator crawl. Okay, this movement creates a diagonal coordination drill. Okay, so it's going to really make you think. One of the more difficult ones to start off learning, aside from the shrimp. I find the shrimp is the hardest drill to learn because it involves being on your back, and just as people, being on our back and moving is the most unfamiliar thing in the world. Anytime we do anything face down, it's a little bit easier to understand because we're used to crawling and being in that kind of downward facing position. Being on our back, looking up, very, very awkward. So the alligator crawl introduces diagonal coordination. So we're going to start in sort of a 4-point, I'll call it like a football stance, okay, where there's a lineman getting ready to play football. So we got our feet and our hands in the relatively lined up position, nice bent knee position. What I'm going to do is I'm going to think about reaching out with one hand and following that same direction with the opposite leg. Some people refer to this as a Spider-Man crawl, whatever helps you understand the basic movement. But if you can understand Spider-Man climbing up a wall, it'll help you understand the position. So again, it's kind of like 4-point stance. I'm going to reach with one hand, and I'm going to step with the opposite leg. Okay? As I step with the opposite leg, it's very important that I externally rotate the toes so that I can open my knee and drop my opposite hip to the floor. Now, to make it more difficult, all you're going to do is you're going to drop and lower your chest to the floor. This is going to make it more or less difficult. As you start doing it, keep your head and chest a little bit higher so that way you don't have to do as much upper body work or core work, okay? So from here, we're going to just do the opposite. Now, in this case, my left hand's going to reach as my right leg steps, and I'm going to rotate my right toes to the outside, and I'm going to drop my left hip. Okay? You should have 2 moving parts and 2 stationary parts. So now my right hand and my left foot are going to move. My other 2 hand and feet will be stationary. Okay. They call it alligator crawl. As you get better and better at it, you keep your head and chest much lower to the floor, and you glide along the mat like an alligator would. The alligator doesn't create too much space between the ground and its belly. So to make it more difficult, you would just keep yourself a little bit lower, almost like you're dragging your nose on the mat. The next movement is one of the most simpler movements that we can do. Most people have done this since they were kids. It's called the reverse crab walk. Okay, this can be done in a forward or reversed fashion. We generally do it in the reverse way, but it follows the same concepts as the normal crab walk. But we do it as the reverse crab walk. So we're going to be sitting down, okay, and we're going to be moving towards our backside. So our hands are going to be positioned behind us, nice and flat. Fingers are usually pointing away. You can do them with your fingers pointing towards you, depending on your wrist flexibility. Fingers away makes it a little bit easier. Feet are nice and flat to the floor, not too close, not too far away. I'm going to elevate my hips as high as I can to create a strong platform on my stomach. So I want to engage my posterior chain. So I'm squeezing my butt, my lower back. I'm pulling my shoulders backwards, keeping my head neutral. From here, again, diagonal coordination. I'm going to be moving my hand and opposite foot all the way across the mat. Very simple. It's not important to do this one fast, but slow and controlled, and making sure that we keep our posterior chain engaged the entire time. Do it from a different direction. Our next drill is called the sit-out drill. Again, creating diagonal coordination, hip rotation, and shoulder positioning, hand and shoulder positioning. Okay, it's very important that we have our hand and shoulders stacked underneath each other to create a strong, stabilized shoulder. The farther our shoulders and hands are away from each other, the more pressure you put onto your own hand. Okay, so again, we're going to start off in that same 4-point stance that we did for our alligator crawl. From here, we're going to take an external step with one leg. Not over exaggerated. I don't need to step all the way out here. Just a small opening of my foot. I'm going to take that hand off the ground. I'm going to balance on these 2 points. hand, opposite foot. Again, diagonally coordinating our base points. Now from here, my opposite foot is going to rotate through, and I'm going to drive my hips through with it, head coming straight up to the ceiling. Notice how my shoulder and wrist are stacked under each other, creating good stability. I'll come back, and I'll do the other side. Open the foot, lift the hand, kick the hip through. My hand that's free should be coming back to my hip, not floating out. Remember, elbows to your body keeps yourself safer. Come back, open the hip, lift the hand, kick the leg through. Your hip should be off the ground. Your foot that's kicked through can be making contact with the floor, or you can leave it floating for a little bit more core engagement. But the hip motion is the most important part, okay? So make sure you're not just kicking your leg through and forgetting about the rotation. Okay, you need to rotate on that shoulder so that way your chest can go to the floor, and then from there you have follow-up movements that can add a little bit more movement to create a little bit more like a realistic position. Okay, you'll see this in kind of a lot of front headlock escapes, peek out. Sometimes you'll refer to it in like a wrestling terminology, or we call it a sit-out drill. Our next movement is called the scorpion walk. This drill creates a lot of upper body strength, posterior strength, body coordination, and understanding weight distribution. All of the elements in most of our line drills or solo drills. So we're going to start with a 1 foot on the mat position, 2 hands in front of it. Okay, you could be up onto your toes in this drill. It doesn't have to be flat-footed. Okay, so 2 hands on the mat, 1 foot on the ground. Now here's our scorpion tail. Squeezing my posterior chain, reaching that scorpion tail to the ceiling. From here, we need to work on distributing weight. So in order for me to move my hands, no problem in this initial position. From here, I cannot move my foot until I shift the weight over my hands. So I'm going to use my foot that's on the ground to elevate my hips, driving my shoulders over my wrists. At this point now, I can bring my foot to a position where now my hands can be light, because now my base is all on my foot. From here, I'll move my hands and then bring my foot up. Move my hands, bring my foot up. Okay, so this teaches you how to understand the concept of weight distribution in order to move a hand or a foot, which is basically how we walk. We can't walk until we distribute all of our weight to one leg, making the other leg light, and then continuing the motion. That's how walking works, and that's how you'll do the same scorpion walk. Your job is to do this movement X amount of times with one scorpion tail, and then the other with the other. Okay, so now we'll go right leg up, reach with my hands, bring up with my foot. Reach with my hands, bring up with my foot. Hands move, and then the feet move. Okay, it's a very good drill, helping with some mobility in the hips. Again, core, posterior chain strength, and just overall coordination. Our next movement is called the bridge and turtle. It combines 2 different movements that are going to allow you to get from a bottom position to a top position. You'll generally see this movement taught with the upa mount escape. Okay, we're going to start off on our back. I like to do this in a kind of side-to-side fashion. Okay, so that way you can kind of see the rotation that you might need. Anytime I do anything that involves being on my back, I like to start off with a break fall, just to continue to reintroduce movements that you've done without needing it to be the primary movement of the drill. Okay, so I'll do a break fall. From here, again, our normal kind of home base position, loaded. Feet are loaded up, elbows tight, head and shoulders off the ground. I'm going to look in whatever direction that I want to bridge. Okay, this cannot be a straight back bridge. Okay, I need to create rotation so that I can eventually get to my knees to a belly down position. So when I bridge, I want to bridge up onto one shoulder. It's very, very important that I extend my hips as high as I possibly can. Okay, so don't try to go halfway. Over exaggerate the bridging motion. This will again help with your upa mount escape. Heavy, heavy, heavy bridge up onto your shoulder, engaging that posterior chain. The shoulder that I'm driving to, that foot is going to remain contacted with the floor as I rotate onto my toe. Okay, this is going to be the most difficult part to do. Okay, you want to try to maintain your hips as high as you can. So I bridge up onto my shoulder, I elevate, I bring my other leg off the ground, and I bring my knee up, becoming my first base point, along with my corresponding elbow, and then my second elbow, which gives us our turtle position of the bridge and turtle. So again, I sit out, I do the other direction. So now I'm going over my right shoulder, loaded base position, bridge up onto your shoulder, rotate, knee comes up nice and high, and then I get to my turtle position, to which case I can gain my posture, I can play more of like a broken posture position. It kind of depends on the situation. In MMA, you'll usually see them broken posture a little bit so that they can kind of protect themselves from getting punched. Okay, but in a grappling scenario, you want to initially start to build your posture so that way you can stand up and potentially open the guard. Okay, so again, seated position, bridging up on the shoulder, bringing my knee up nice and high, finding my base points with my knees and elbows. It's very important that you do not let yourself belly out. Okay, so when I do this bridge and turtle, if I allow my belly to hit the mat, okay, now it's going to be much more difficult to start to build my base and get on top position with a good base underneath me so I can start to build my posture. I cannot build my posture without having my foundation underneath me. So again, bridging up onto my shoulder, knee comes up, connects to the elbow. I find my position to where I can start to build my posture if I need to. My belly does not hit the ground. Our next movement is going to be the forward roll. A very important self-defense technique, learning how to roll out of a position if somebody's attacking you, okay, or somebody shoves you from behind, how we can roll, keep our momentum going, that way we can get back up onto our feet. Okay, we're going to do two variations, forward roll and a backward roll. We're going to start with a very similar foot neutral position, shoulder width apart. I'm going to take one step forward with my leg, whatever leg. We're going to do both sides, okay? From here, if you're brand new to forward rolling, I would recommend you dropping down to a knee to make the impact distance much less, okay? From here, I'm going to reach both of my fingers back towards my rear knee. I'm going to place my hands on the mat as flat as I possibly can. I'm going to tuck my chin and look back towards the direction of my fingertips, okay? Keeping my back nice and rounded, I'm going to be pushing off my lead leg and bringing my shoulders up and over my hips. And then rolling through to this combat-based position. The other side. One knee down, one knee up. Bring my hands back towards me. Tuck my chin. I'm basically going to follow my fingers back towards my rear knee. Use my lead leg to push my hips up and over and roll. I end up in this one knee down, one knee up position to where I could stand up. As you get better and better, doing it from your feet is a more realistic way of doing it. Step, have the fingers guiding backwards, and now again, bend my knees, something like add a break fall to the end of it. Very simple, but takes a level of relaxation in order to move fluidly. If you're too stiff when you're doing these movements, you're going to feel like you're moving like a block instead of a ball. Right back up to our feet. The second variation is the backward shoulder roll. This I usually do from a seated position, but again, can be done standing. So we're going to face the opposite direction. Then we're going to sit on our butt comfortably. basic way I like to teach this is I'm looking over my shoulder and I'm going to pretend that I'm trying to throw a ball over my shoulder. Okay, I want to pretend that there's a string connecting my feet and my hands. So as my hands move to this right-handed sided direction, my feet are going to follow. I should end up rolling over my right shoulder, in which case will bring me over my knee and then ending up in a kneeling position. So very simply, look over my shoulder, throw my hands up and over, my feet will follow, and I end up on my knees. Okay? You should not be rolling over your neck at all. We call it a shoulder roll. Similar to the forward roll. Sometimes you feel a little bit of graze on your ear. That's about as much as you want to feel. Okay, the more of your skull hits the mat, the more restricted your roll is going to be, and you're going to end up getting injured more or less. Okay, look over the shoulder, throw the ball into a kneeling position. Very simple, but again, relaxation is kind of part of it. Look over your shoulder, throw the ball, ending up on my knees, scissors my feet, and then I can do the other side. Okay, depending on how much room you have, you might have to scoot forward or backward a little bit. And then again, look over the shoulder, roll backwards into a kneeling position.